This is the Rockpals 280, or it's a 300 watt output AC. Max is at 600 watts for peak loads. It has 24 volt output, 12 volt DC output, and then 3 extra 12 volt. These are those little tube fittings. I think it's a 5x5 by 2 1/4, 2.1 millimeters. Is those traditional connectors you see on the backs of electronic devices. 2 2.1 amp USBs and 2 3 amp USBs, or USB 3 rather, I should say. So it comes with a bunch of features. It's very small, as you can see. That's my hand on it, so it is a very little device. It is very portable. It has a plug in the back for DC charging, which this was the one thing I didn't actually know previous to purchasing it. I thought it had 2 different inputs. I thought I would have one that I could run off of the DC for my vehicle, and then one that I could run off of the photovoltaic DC input. But they're actually a shared input for DC, so you can take between 12 and 24 volts DC. It came with a DC charger that plugs in here and then goes into your car cigarette lighter outlet, or auxiliary outlet. The other function that you can plug into that is this. I think they're like an MP5 or whatever, MC5 cable or something like that. They connect to standard solar panels, so you can get some simple 60, 50, whatever watt panels, and then plug them in directly to this and charge it. It actually charges pretty fast. Will Prowse does a really good review of all the technical data and all the specifications of this and many other devices on his channel. So check that one out. He'll go into more of the details of load rating and all that. It came with one of these. These are the little plugs that go in the front. This can be to put in the 12 volt or the 24 volt, and then run the appliance relative to that voltage rating. And then it comes with an AC charger as well. The device has a pop-up handle. This is kind of loose. It's not necessarily flimsy, it's just kind of loose. I wish they'd put some like fur style bushings in there to keep it kind of a little bit more taut as you lift it, so it just feels a little bit more complete as a package. Otherwise, it's really nice. Comes with 2 LED lights on the front as well, and then each section, each one of these little loops has its own on, so you can turn on this, and then it indicates the total charge of the battery inside, which is 12.6 volts right now, and it's outputting to DC2, which is really hard to read on this little screen. There it is, DC2. You could turn on DC1, you could turn on the USB, and you could turn on AC. AC gets its own thing over here. Once the inverter kicks on, that'll say 110. That'll be the outputs, 80, 99, 114, boom. That's what it's able to create right now. So I can plug in an appliance that's 300 watts at running, and has a peak of 600. And each of these has its own little off switch. So I'm using this to power the refrigerator, a little small screen, my Wi-Fi, and some other things in the Jeep. I've already done some testing with the voltage outputs to make sure everything worked for what I needed, and it seems to be pretty regulated and pretty good. It doesn't have a full voltage regulation, so as the voltage of the battery internally starts to drop, once it nears the bottom half of its charge, it will then output less than 12 volts, which can be very obnoxious for demanding 12 volt appliances. So I'll have to put some regulation on the outbound 12 volts, or step down the 24 volt down into a 12 volt regulated, just so I can get a cleaner DC 12 volt signal. This is the user manual, everything that came with it. I kind of panned over that real slow so you can kind of pause if there's any part of it you want to know the information about. The other side is all in, I assume, Mandarin Chinese or something of that, because I don't know any of that. I'm going to take this out into the Jeep so you can kind of see where it's going to go, what it's going to do, and then we'll go from there. So this is probably where it will sit in the Jeep, in this back corner. It seems to fit pretty good, tucked in to this little cavity over here. If I build a little stand for it, it gives the ventilation fan some room to breathe and me a place to set it without it really interfering too much with the Jeep's layout. I'll have to build a bracket and all that, little battery box kind of thing. I might eventually get 2 of these as well, secondary as a backup, and run it parallel on the opposite side. Have the DC feed in and have the DC feed in and be part of a system that I'm going to kind of collaborate with the auxiliary port that's underneath the decking system that comes up, and I have a wiring harness that I've attached to the vehicle's wiring harness, so that DC input from the battery will be part of a set of DC systems that I'll run. So they'll all be integrated. I'll kind of go over that at another point, but this battery is just the first in testing out these types of batteries, their longevity, their ability to handle these kinds of loads, and their efficiency at doing so. This is that refrigerator that I got by Alpicool. I think it's the 15 or 16, I can't remember. As you can see, it's all dewy in there and cold. It's reading out at 47 degrees and it's pushing it down. The output on this says that it's at 12.3 volts, and this is reading 11.6. I'm not sure why there's that huge variance there. It's a pretty good variance. It's a half a volt variance. But otherwise, this device seems to be able to do what I'm looking for it to do. So I think as of right now, it should be good. I'll be testing this out with this refrigerator. I'll eventually be attaching solar to the roof of the Jeep that'll power this and a second one that I can swap the cables between, or just a switch between the two of them manually. And then I'll kind of report back as to how this system and the scale of this system worked for my application. Again, everyone's going to have a different application, maybe a bigger refrigerator or more electrical needs, but mine are fairly minimal. So this was a flash deal on Amazon for I think $220. Normally like $300, so for that price, this scale, this size of a battery, it's a fairly large 280 watt hour battery, so that's a pretty large amount of storage for battery capacity for that price. Obviously, I would recommend going with something like a lithium ion or a lithium iron phosphate. Those are much better batteries for hot climate environments like in a vehicle. But again, I'm just testing this out and seeing how it works. I assume this should work fine for my application. It's basically just going to make the Jeep habitat more usable.